Welcome to Dust and Echoes. My name is James Cawley, and every week I will tell you a new, original story. Stories crafted from the places deep within my mind where memories and half-buried moments claw their way back to daylight. Dust and Echoes is a cinematic audiobook-style podcast. Each episode features a new story, a new terror, or a new adventure. So join me every week wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out my entire collection of stories by visiting enterthedust.com. Let's begin this week's story. I call this one The Fifth Number. The highways are bones. The cities? Gone. Choked in glassed sand and the ash of old sins. What's left of America runs on solar scrap, sun-baked legends, and the bones of men who died chasing myths they didn't understand. You're listening to Dust and Echoes, the show where I, James Cawley, bring you original stories every week, dug from the wreckage where the future went to die. This story is carved in bone, painted in blood, and salted with native myth and radioactive ash. Out in the wasteland, something's still ticking, a dangerous briefcase, unshackled from the mummified wrist of the last great chief of the red, white, and blue clan. A detonator wielding power activated by old codes. Now, a tribal sheriff of the last sovereign outpost west of the divide is forced on a suicide run through the irradiated bones of post-war Vegas to save his people. Chasing steel etched with secrets. Buried in the skull of a false god. Outriding a psychotic warlord. Wearing a face he cut off something that used to howl at the moon. This isn't hope. This isn't redemption. This is the fifth number. Chapter 1. The sun scraped across the sand like a slow blade. Beshup watched it rise from the edge of the south fence, leaning into the wind that hadn't let up for 3 days. It had filled the seams of the village with grit, chewed the edges of their solar panels, worn the paint off the signs warning strangers to turn back. He spat. The moisture vanished before it hit the ground. The fence line buzzed weakly, powered by 2 cracked panels and a salvaged inverter that coughed more than it breathed. Beyond it, the waste spread empty and loud with nothing. Flat horizon, old road teeth, a sky like scorched tin. His hand rested on the grip of the revolver at his hip, but it was muscle memory more than caution. Nothing moved out there. Not anymore. Behind him, the village stirred. Morning fires lit. A grinding pump somewhere tried to pull water from a well that hadn't been generous in months. The children were up, running circuits around the flattened shells of the old Humvees, yelling in languages half lost and half invented. Beshup turned back toward the center of town. His boots sank half an inch into the dust with every step. Mary was already at her stall, woven mats laid out, bowls of dried cornmeal, a few lengths of copper wire coiled like snakes in a bucket. She wore her red scarf today. Meant she hadn't slept. "You're early," he said. "I'm never early," she replied. "You're late in the head." He grunted. She passed him a tin cup with something warm in it. "It's bitter," she warned. "Good." They stood without speaking. "Got a feeling?" she asked after a while. He sipped, winced. "You think it's time?" Before she could answer, the horn on the east tower gave a single, stuttering bark. Beshup was already moving. The tower guard was waving frantically, binoculars clutched in both hands. "Someone's coming!" he shouted. "Orders, sir." Beshup climbed to the platform, took the binoculars, and squinted hard into the blinding haze. There, barely visible against the rise of dust and sun, something moved. Not fast. Not anymore. A man on foot, maybe. Stumbling, dragging something. His outline warbled in the heat shimmer, legs jerking like string cut uneven. "Let him come," Beshup said. They opened the gate just enough to let a man crawl through. He collapsed into the dirt like something too old to breathe. Skin cracked like glass, lips blackened, no shoes. The cloth wrapped around his head was half melted into his scalp. Beshup knelt. The man opened one eye. "Scout?" Beshup asked. The man gave a nod. Beshup poured a trickle of water into his mouth. Most of it ran down his chin. "Who did this to you?" The man coughed. A raw, wet sound. His voice came shredded. He's coming if you don't bring him the codes." Beshup leaned in closer to hear the dying man better. "Who's coming?" "What codes?" The scout coughed and once again whispered, "The Coyote Man. He has an army with him. They found bombs under the old air base in the waste. He says your father." The man trailed off, air exhaling, eyes closing. Beshup grabbed the dying man by the shoulders firmly, but with intent. He spoke into his ear. "What did he say about my father?" The man's sun-scarred eye opened one last time, and he spoke his final words. He knows. He knows your father found the code to make the big, big bombs come alive again. He's evil, Beshup. You have to do something. You. The man died in Beshup's arms, the whipping sand already collecting in small drifts on the man's face. The desert reclaims all. Behind Beshup, the village was quiet. Even the kids had stopped yelling. He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his knees. His thumb found the chain around his neck, the single worn dog tag that had belonged to his father. His father gave it to him years ago, before he vanished. When he handed it to Beshup, his father said, "I'll have the other one with me. In that way, know we will always be together." Beshup was 30 then. 10 years had passed since his father went into the waste and never returned. A scavenging mission gone wrong is what he was told. But he knew something was not right. His father always returned. He knew the waste better than any other man alive. Beshup saw his father digging something up the night he left. Something wrapped in old, cracked black plastic. Something square that he took with him that night and did not return. Mary touched Beshup's shoulder lightly, jolting him from his memories. "You know you have to go see him. It may be painful, but it's the only way." She looked at the dead scout, and then up into his far-off glare. Beshup's eyes met hers, and he nodded. Even though grown, he still hated when he had to visit the new in his old cave. The guy might be the best shaman this side of the divide, but there was something about the old, irradiated man that sent chills through Beshup's spine. He carried the old ways and could show things through ceremony and smoke. He looked south. Past the fence, past the heat, past the curve of the world. Then he turned and walked toward the cave. Chapter 2. The cave was older than the village. It had been there before the bombs fell, before the war turned the air to sickness, before cities became silhouettes and sand swallowed their spines. No one knew what it had been in the old world. Now it was the shaman's home, if home was the right word for a stone throat full of smoke and whisper. Beshup left his weapons outside the entrance, laid neatly beside a stone with hand-carved spirals etched into its face. He ducked into the dark. Inside, the heat shifted. Air felt thicker, cooler somehow. Like the cave remembered when the world had water. A single thread of light wound down from a natural chimney, flickering over cracked bones, charred incense bowls, and a set of polished mirrors arranged into a circle on the floor. The new Pohakantan stood barefoot inside the mirror ring, cloaked in layers of threadbare cloth and plastic ribbons that crinkled when he moved. His skin had the color and texture of baked clay. One eye was a milky bulb, sealed half shut by a long-healed melt scar. The other eye watched Beshup with something that was not surprise. "You bring wind," he said. His voice was like paper ripping. "I bring warning," Beshup said. The new tilted his head, listening. "Coyote Man rises," Beshup said. "He found the firebombs." The shaman turned, knelt beside the mirrors. He touched them with fingers stained black at the tips. "The old world left many keys and many doors. Most should stay shut." Beshup stepped into the ring. "Our scout told us that Coyote Man thinks my father somehow has the device that will make the bombs active again. The night he left, I saw him dig something up and take it. I need your visions new. Tell me where I can find my father and this device so that I can stop Coyote Man from coming and destroying our people." The new drew a line in the dust with his knuckle. "He walked west, alone, carried a weight no one else could. He said nothing to me. That was his kindness." Beshup pulled the dog tag from under his shirt, held it out. "Then show me." The shaman nodded once. "You'll see him, but not as he was. Sand shapes memory. You ready?" Beshup didn't answer, just knelt. The new placed a thin stone on Bishup's chest, whispered in a broken dialect. The world shifted. Light spun. The sound of air left the cave entirely. Dark. Then the wind. And then sand. Endless sand. Beshup stood waist deep in it, breath ragged. His hands trembled. All around, a sunless plain. Something moved beneath the sand, rising. A shape. Human. Shoulders, arms, face. It was his father, covered in dust, flesh half vanished, eyes still sharp. He didn't speak, just stared. The sand swirled and everything around them became white. Then the brightness faded, and he was somewhere else, in a big, shadowed canyon. He could see his father, but he was much younger. He knew his father was showing him a memory now, something important. He watched his father descend down the steep ledges of the canyon, going further into the darkness below. At the bottom, the canyon widened, and sunlight from far above sent rays of light to pierce the darkness. His father walked towards a large landslide with years of flash flood debris scattered all around. Then he saw it. An airplane. Not just any airplane. This ancient plane had the words, "The United States of America," emblazoned across its hull. This was the president's plane in the old days, the last chief of a now burnt world. His father climbed inside the wreckage. Beshup could see the plane didn't wreck down here. No, it had wrecked or landed long ago up on top of this mesa. Years of erosion, flash floods, and landslides had brought it down into the darkness of this huge canyon somehow, protecting it, keeping it hidden all this time, until his father discovered it by chance while out scavenging. A voice yelled down from somewhere high above. "Anything down there?" Even though Beshup had never heard his voice, he knew instantly who it came from. It was Coyote Man. His father used to scavenge with him in the old days before he started his wasteland cult. "Nothing yet. Give me a minute and I'll be back up." His father yelled back up. Smart, Beshup thought. Even then he knew this was something he had to protect. His father turned and crawled deep inside the sand-choked tomb of this ancient plane. He saw the jerky, textured skin and brittle bones of a skeleton wearing a blue suit and red tie, sitting in a chair near the back of the plane. The suit was faded. An American flag pin, tarnished and ancient, was affixed to the suit's lapel. The president's ancient mummified corpse, jaw hanging loose, stared at Bishup's father in the thin, dead light. Attached to his right wrist was a briefcase with a screen and buttons. He knew what this device was. This same thing was talked about in one of the old books he'd scavenged from the old times. The nuclear football is what they called it, a protocol that only the President of the United States could activate to launch a nuclear retaliation, to ignite the biggest of bombs, leaving nothing for an invading enemy to use. Beshup's father took the case, the President's wrist bones instantly falling into dust. In the President's other hand was something shiny, a glint of silver in this dim light. It was a set of military dog tags like soldiers would wear. Beshup reached for his neck. He knew that one day in the future, one of those would belong to him. He could see something was written on the other one, but then his father put it in his pocket. The sand returned, blinding him. He was once again standing in front of his half-buried father in the desert. His father reached down into the sand and slowly pulled something up. It was a single dog tag. He held it out. Beshup stepped forward, took it, turned it in his palm. Scratched into the metal was a single symbol, the Statue of Liberty. Beshup blinked and woke gasping, face flat in the dust. The cave returned in fragments, stone, fire, the news, quiet breath. He clutched the tag around his neck, still there, alone. But now he knew where the other had gone. He knew what his father was trying to tell him in the vision. He knew where his father had gone. His father had told him of this place, and a great statue that used to represent the greatness these lands once held. He had to go to the ruins of Las Vegas, a once great city he was told in old tales, to find this statue. The one with her crown still visible if you knew where to look. He stood without a word. The shaman did not stop him. He just nodded, as if something overdue had finally begun. Beshup walked out into the blinding light. Chapter 3. The garage was the only structure in the village that still bore its original name. Motor Pool, Unit 49, stenciled in flaking white across the rusted metal doors. Beshup kicked them open and stepped inside. Dust curled in the beams of sunlight leaking through cracked ceiling panels. A tarp-covered shape loomed in the center of the room, like a sleeping animal. Old posters, safety drills, army mascots, a pinup girl in combat boots fluttered weakly in the breeze. Beshup yanked the tarp free. Underneath, the tribe's relic, the off-road Frankenstein. The Frankenstein was half military transport held together by scavenged parts from other ancient vehicles, crafted by the tribe's scrapyard genius, Uncle Rip. It was patched with bulletproof plating, turbine vents, and a frame reinforced with what used to be a satellite dish and part of a playground jungle gym. Solar film coated the hood in cracked blue-black veins. The wheels had once belonged to a mining hauler. The man might be able to fix anything, but it sure didn't look too pretty. But it could get him into the waste quick, and that's all that mattered. Beshup ran a hand across the surface, warm. It had been charging for weeks. He opened the driver's side, slid into the seat. The controls were brutal. Stripped toggles, a starter crank, a steel lever for braking. He flipped the breaker switch. Lights on the dash flickered awake in red. He turned the key. The engine coughed. Once. Twice. Then caught. It sounded like an earthquake in a metal drum. Mary appeared at the door, face pale. "You're going," she said. He nodded once. "You know what lies out there." "I know." She walked forward, pulled something from her coat pocket, a rough canvas satchel. Dried root, powdered water purifier, battery pack, and this. She handed him a small metal spike, hollow-tipped. "This is the last of the tribe's EMP darts. If they find you, use it." Beshup took it, pocketed it. Mary looked at him like she wanted to say more, but words hung too heavy. He reached into his collar, pulled the dog tag over his head, held it out. She took it, clutched it. "I'll need it back," he said, "when I find the other." She nodded. He climbed back into the truck, kicked the door shut. The main gate opened slowly, solar gears whining. The vehicle growled forward out of the shade into the mouth of the dead road. and then he was gone. Dust trailing behind him like smoke from an old-world fire. Chapter 4. The dead road out of the village was once I-15. You could still see the ghosts of lane markers in places where the asphalt hadn't shattered under time, heat, or violence. Beshup's wheels chewed through it all. Concrete shards, scorched glass, the bones of things long picked clean. The truck's suspension groaned as he angled off the broken highway and into the open sand. The sun wasn't even at zenith, and already the heat inside the cab was animal. He kept the vents cracked, fingers near the manual coolant sprayer if the solar cells started to bubble. He drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the holster strapped to his thigh. For hours, there was nothing. Then, something. Black smoke. Thin at first, then thicker, curling like a finger above the desert ridge to the east. He pulled back on the throttle, veered uphill. What he saw at the top made him kill the motor. Below, in a narrow gully, a convoy. 4 vehicles, 2 jeeps, 1 armored personnel carrier, 1 truck loaded with covered cargo. Painted black, marked with a crude symbol that looked like a coyote's jaw snapped in half. The militia. They were stopped. One of the jeeps had thrown a track. A man knelt beside it, welding something into place. The others stood watch, rifles slung, moving with the ease of soldiers who thought they owned the sand. Beshup backed the truck down the slope. Soft, slow, no brakes. When he reached the lower ridge, he checked his rearview mirror. Nothing behind him. Yet. He turned west, plotted a wide arc around the gully, and didn't touch the gas until the dust had time to settle. The encounter wasn't close, but it was too close. Coyote Man's reach was real, and it was moving north. Nightfall came slow and not quiet. The air sang with power lines that no longer carried anything. Static hissed in the back of his mind. He didn't stop until he saw the shape. A collapsed watchtower, its bones half sunk in a dry creek. Shelter. He parked the truck beneath the crossbeam, cloaked it with a thermal net, and crawled into the shadows. Before sleeping, he pulled out the map he'd etched from memory. Old Vegas layout, cross-referenced with solar decay charts. He found the landmark. The one that matched the tag. New York, New York Casino. If it still stood, even part of it, it would be buried under dunes. But maybe, just maybe, its crown still pierced the surface. Beshup traced his finger toward it, then lay down with the wind against his back, and the stars burning overhead like cold, distant watchfires. Chapter 5. The next morning came without color, just brightness, flat and brutal. Beshup didn't eat. He drank a mouthful of water, swished it, spat it, wiped his face with a rag soaked in mint oil, climbed back into the truck. By mid-morning, the dunes shifted. He saw her, the crown, 7 spikes worn down like shark teeth jutting from the top of a half-buried head. The Statue of Liberty replica from the New York Casino, reduced now to a rusted mockery, sand-choked and eroded. It looked like it had been melted into the ground by time. Or hate. He circled it on foot, rifle slung, eyes sharp, no tracks, no fresh marks in the sand. Good. The entry point was a maintenance shaft, bent inward at the rim, but not collapsed. He used a pry bar to crack the seal. The air inside was stale and metallic, tinged with something old and burnt. He clicked his headlamp on and descended. Nobody's been in here for years, he thought. For the first time, he was afraid of what he might find. He knew that visions were real. He knew that those who walked before us could talk to us, if we needed them to. He wiggled his way through the half-buried tunnel, and then the room opened up. His head emerged into a stairway going up. The stairs going down were long buried beneath the sand. He climbed the stairs and came to an open hatch leading into the interior of the statue's head. And there, folded into the far wall like he'd sat down to rest and never moved again, was his father, mummified by the heat, hands resting on his knees, face angled toward the window that looked out across what used to be the strip. His skin was paper. His eyes had long dried away. Around his neck hung the nuclear football. The briefcase was secured by a military chain, padlocked, the keypad screen dark with a single crack across its glass. Beshup approached. The corpse didn't move. Of course it didn't. But it felt like it was watching him anyway. He knelt, reached forward, unclipped the dog tag, turned it, scratched crudely into the back. 5. His breath caught. He flicked the briefcase switch. The screen came alive, buzzing faintly. 3-1-6-. One space left. A blinking underscore. And below it, warning. 1 entry remaining. Incorrect code will disable permanently. Beshup stared at it, and then at his father. The last number. That's all it would take to save or destroy an already broken world. The screen said there was only one attempt left. One last number to be entered. Could this really be that easy, he thought. The number 5 carved into his father's dog tag must be the last number needed. Beshup could enter the wrong number, 3 for instance, and the device and all the bombs it activated would be disabled. But he knew this would not stop Coyote Man from destroying his people. He looked at what remained of his father, now dust and bone. I know you had to hide this until the right time, but I really wish you would have said goodbye. Why could you not just leave this detonator here? But he knew the answer, just like the solution, was not that easy. He knew that his father was playing his part in the great chain of life, just as Beshup has been called to carry it forward now. Somehow his father knew. Beshup knew what he had to do. He would have to stand tall against the evil that knocked at his people's door. He'd have to face it head on, for honor, for purpose, to save his people from the approaching darkness by finding the light. He closed the case gently, wrapped it in cloth, slung it across his back with care. Then he turned and made his way back down the stairs. 3 stairs down, he stopped, turned and stepped back inside the room. He looked across the tomb that held his father's remains for eternity and said, Zan Nisinga. Goodbye, Dad. I'll finish walking this path for both of us. Chapter 6. Beshup reached the truck just as the wind began to shift. There was a scent in the air, oily, metallic, burned. Not desert wind, engine heat. Fuel. He froze, stood still, listened. A second later, the pop of tires crunching sand echoed across the dunes. Distant. Not yet on him, but close enough. Too close. He slung the football into the passenger seat, dropped the emergency blanket over it, and threw himself behind the wheel. The engine growled to life. He pulled a sharp U-turn, punching the throttle. The rear wheels dug in, spun, caught. In the mirror, dust plumes. 2, 3 vehicles behind. Fast, light. Militia scouts. One mounted with a crude cannon welded from a fuel tank. Beshup floored it. The truck shuddered as it tore through loose sand, solar cells catching light off the windshield. He veered through a gully where old signage poked up through the dirt like broken fingers. Billboards, lamp posts. The first shot screamed past his rear tire. Sand exploded. The second shot hit his rear fender, buckling it. He swerved, cut into a dry riverbed, kicked the gear into crawl, then floored it again. He needed cover. Ahead, a pile of crushed cars, long buried, rusted steel teeth sticking out like ribs. He angled into it, spun the wheel hard, cut the engine. Silence fell. He grabbed the EMP dart from his coat, slid out of the truck, waited, pressed flat against a panel of scorched steel. The militia trucks rolled in, tires grinding stone. Beshup moved quick and low. One of the scouts had jumped down to piss in the dirt. The man driving yelled at him to hurry. "He can't have made it far. I damn near tore his whole rear axle off. Keep your eyes open. He's got to be right here close." Beshup got close enough to see the sweat crust on the man's neck. He jabbed the EMP dart into the rear axle of the first truck, then rolled backward into shadow. The EMP dart did its job well, and these idiots helped it work even better. They had stopped all their vehicles close together. The pulse from the EMP would permanently destroy any electronics, including the ignitions and engines of the vehicles they were driving. Frankenstein was safe from this pulse, not just because it was far enough away, but because it was fitted with the EMP shielding. These vehicles were not. This would give him a chance to escape. 3 seconds later, a hiss, a pulse, a whine. The lead vehicle choked and died. Lights flickered out. Radios screamed static. The militia panicked. Beshup sprinted for his own rig, launched into the driver's seat, floored it again. His tires kicked gravel, sand, trash, anything not bolted to the planet. He didn't look back until the horizon had swallowed everything behind him. Then, and only then, did he let himself breathe. The briefcase sat on the seat beside him, pulsing faintly. Not yet, he thought. Not until the end. Chapter 7. Frankenstein limped towards the north end of the dead strip, where buildings no longer had names, only shapes. It wasn't a road anymore, not really. Just cracked concrete and rebar veined with sand and bone. Beshup took the long way around. Coyote Man's compound was too close now. That meant Nellis. He remembered it from old maps, the airbase. Once a training ground, then a fortress. Now a tomb full of reactivated warheads. The scout had said they found the big one. He didn't need a schematic to know what that meant. The kind of warhead they never admitted was built. Something deep. Something final. And all that stood between it and another burning world sat beside him. Contained in a hardened black briefcase with a cracked keypad and a single missing digit. The number 5. Scratched into metal by a man who chose to bury himself alive to protect it. He rubbed the dog tag between his fingers. It was warm. Or maybe that was just him. He spotted the ridge, flat, sun-baked, scattered with wreckage and half-toppled light poles. He killed the engine, let the truck roll the last 50 feet in silence. Below, the compound. Barbed wire had been coiled into crude walls, guard towers built from stacked vehicle husks, generators hummed, banners whipped in the wind, black flags with the coyote jaw symbol painted over stolen government signage. Inside, men moved like soldiers. But they weren't. Not really. Too loose. Too confident. They carried weapons scavenged from 50 wars, but their eyes were wild. Beshup lowered the binoculars. He couldn't walk in. He couldn't wait it out, but he didn't have to. They'd be expecting him. He took the case, strapped it to his back. Then he walked straight down the ridge, hands out, slow, deliberate. It didn't take long. Shots rang out, warning fire. Dust kicked at his heels. Voices barked orders. Spotlights flared on. By the time he reached the wire, 3 men had rifles on him, and one was radioing ahead. Gun raised directly at Beshup, the soldier on the right yelled out, "Who in the hell are you?" "I'm the one with the number," Beshup said. They froze. He set the football down on the ground, hands still raised. "Take me to him," he said. "Coyote Man." They stared for a second, then moved fast, grabbing his arms, binding his hands, dragging him past the gates. The compound swallowed him. Chapter 8. They pushed him through the ruins of the base, past stripped jets, sand-filled barracks, bunkers reborn as temples. Fires burned in rusted oil drums. Speakers mounted to floodlights broadcast low, looping audio. Static punctuated by a man's voice whispering scripture not found in any book. Fire remakes, it said. Only ash is pure. The guards said nothing as they led him down into the concrete heart of the silo. Cold seeped up through the floor, even here in the desert. Lights flickered like they were remembering how to die. They brought him to a chamber that looked like it had once controlled missiles. Now the walls were papered with maps, diagrams, handwritten equations, and Polaroids of decayed cities pinned beside children's drawings. Coyote Man stood at the center. He was large and muscular, with a wild beard and dark eyes. His defining feature was a rotting coyote skull, which he wore on his head as a hat, a symbol of power to many. Beshup knew what he really was, though, a trickster. His voice, when it came, was still too smooth. "You've got your father's walk." Beshup said nothing. Coyote Man took 2 steps forward, slow, like he was remembering what it meant to move like a man. "You know, I thought he'd outlive me. The bastard always had better luck. Then he goes and vanishes, just up and walks into the desert like a storybook ghost." Beshup nodded toward the football on the table. "You found the bombs, but you couldn't light them." Coyote Man smiled. "Not yet." He stepped closer, finger hovering just above the briefcase. "We scavenged together, your father and me, before this world died. Thought we were just finding scraps. Turns out we were gods, digging in our own graveyard." Beshup looked down at the keypad, still blinking, still waiting. Coyote Man's grin faded. "I offered your father a place beside me. Together we would no longer be scrappers roving the waste for old relics. With this briefcase and the final number, which I know your father knew, I know that you know the number. Enter the number. Join me, Beshup. We could be the new gods of this world. Let's watch the world burn once again from atop the empire we build with the threat of this power." Beshup did not blink or reveal himself. The dog tag with the number 5 carved into it burned under his shirt. "What if I tell you the wrong number instead and end all this?" Coyote Man laughed. He leaned in close enough for Beshup to smell the rot of the coyote skull. "Because you would have done it already if it was that simple. You are more like me than you are like your father. You seek power, don't you?" Coyote Man pushed the nuclear football briefcase towards him. "Enter the number." Beshup stared at the empty space blinking on the case. 4 numbers entered long ago by the hand of a president about to destroy the world. Yet he wasn't able to enter the 5th and final number. Was it by chance? Was the plane shot down, or did it crash before he could enter that final world-destroying digit? Or did he change his mind at the last minute? Beshup knew chance did not work this way. He knew what this was. Destiny. Good versus evil. And he knew that even in the darkness, good always wins. The light always destroys the dark, even if it has to wait in that cold place for far too long for the right moment. "Put in the damn number now," Coyote Man snarled. Beshup took a deep breath and his finger found the number 5 button on the keypad. Coyote Man leaned in, eyes wide in the green light of the display. It flickered, and then a small tone was emitted. The briefcase hissed, and then it unlocked. The keypad readout read, "Code verified. The white horse is active." Inside, the warhead trigger, still armed, still alive. Coyote Man stepped forward. "Yes!" Coyote Man yelled. "We're unstoppable now!" Coyote Man grabbed the briefcase to remove it from the table. Beshup was faster. His hand hovered above the large red button that said, "Activate." Coyote Man froze, his smile fading. What the hell do you think you're doing? You'll kill us all." Coyote Man laughed and looked around and then back at Beshup. "You really think that I believe you would push that button? You knew the code. You could have used it and pushed that button from far away, destroying us all. You want something more. I like that. You have balls, my friend. So what is it you want? You want to be king? I can make that happen." Beshup smiled, his finger now resting on the red button that would unleash hell. He thought of Mary. He knew she would already have the radiation diverters going back at the village. She was always 2 steps ahead and prepared just in case. He thought of his father. Not the mummified version of his father, but the loving one that taught him how to use a power converter and where to dig to find the best relics from the past. Coyote Man smiled and put out his hand to shake Beshup's. "Well, what do you want?" Beshup looked into Coyote Man's eyes and said, "I'm just here to finish walking the path that my father started down many years ago. Yes, I could have destroyed you from afar, but I wanted to watch your mask fall away, to see the fear in your eyes as I pushed this button." Coyote Man's eyes widened. Fear, and Beshup did see it as his finger pushed the button down. Beshup closed his eyes, lifted his chin towards the sky, and he smiled. Coyote Man started to yell something, but before his mouth could form words, every cell in his body was vaporized into fire. Golden yellow light was the only thing left. No darkness, only the light. Chapter 9. They say the end of the world came in silence, a flash, a wind, and then the long sleep. But this time, there was sound. Low, deep, rolling like the sky had cracked open just enough to moan. Mary heard it before she saw anything. She was kneeling in the rows, checking the drip lines for the beans, when the wind changed direction, sharp and fast, like it had been yanked from another world. The children stopped playing. One dropped a metal can. No one picked it up. Then it came. Far to the south, past the dead ridgelines and salt beds, past where the old road vanished into desert, a shape rose. Not a storm, not fire, a mushroom cloud. Wide at the base, curling inward, then expanding out again in a bloom of light and ash. It climbed higher than anything had in years. Higher than birds. Higher than storm towers. Higher than hope. The base pulsed orange, then white, then faded into a black tower that stabbed into the sky. The wind followed. It slammed into the village a few seconds later, a hot slap full of grit and breathless force. Tarps flapped. Loose plastic peeled off rooftops. A solar panel tore free and skated across the sand before embedding in a trench. Mary didn't move. The others began to gather, silent at first, then muttering, then still. The old ones, the children, the ones with missing fingers and the ones with cracked goggles and threadbare coats. They started to gather around nervously. Mary heard the whine of the community's radiation deflectors kick on just as they were designed to. It wouldn't stop all of the fallout. Mary knew this. Mary turned toward them. Her voice was steady. "We'll lose the crops. Radiation will settle. We'll wear the suits, filter our air." A pause. "But sometimes sacrifices have to be made in exchange for survival." She looked back toward the cloud. It was still rising, still curling. Beshup did what his father did, carried the fire, but he carried it further. He finished it. The village watched as the plume reached the upper atmosphere, where the wind shredded it into long scars of smoke. Beshup may be gone, but through this sacrifice, they all remain. The end. That was the 5th number. A story written and read by me, James Cawley. If you like stories like this, well, it must be meant to be, because I have many others to tell you. Make sure to follow Dust and Echoes wherever you get your podcasts. Visit dustandechowspodcast.com, where you can see all the other stories I have to share with you. Join us on YouTube, where I bring these stories to life with visual imagery. I hope you'll join me again soon. I'd love to share another one of my stories with you. And remember this: even a small light in a never-ending darkness gives direction. You've just listened to The Fifth Number, written and read by the author, me, James Cawley. If you enjoyed this, well, you're in luck, because I'll have a new original story waiting right here for you every Tuesday. Check out all my stories on my website, enterthedust.com. There you'll be able to see what stories I have coming next, view YouTube versions, and view my entire collection. I even have retro-style paperback versions available for purchase. Do me a favor, if you would. Tell a friend about this podcast, Dust and Echoes. Someone like us. Someone that loves original stories about the things that lie on the edge of dreams, what's kept out in the old barn, or what happens when you visit the crossroads at midnight. Tell them to check this podcast out. It would mean a lot. Thanks for your support. And you'll love next week's story. I'll have it ready and waiting for you.